Good afternoon, everyone. It is my distinct honor to welcome you all to the 12th Virtual Global Human Sex Trafficking Prevention and Awareness Summit. I'm Dr. Dana Hunter, Executive Director of the Louisiana First Foundation and National Coalition for the Prevention of Human Sex Trafficking. Before we begin, I want to invite all of you, and we're so excited. We had over 400 registrants, and I see you guys pouring in. We're getting up close to 200, so come on in. We want you to introduce yourselves in the chat. Share your name, your role, and where you're joining us from. This is a virtual space, but we want it to feel collaborative and just as if we're in the room together. And how beautiful it is that technology has made a way for us to to meet from across the states and even different countries. All right. Today's summit is not just a program of presentations. It is a call to action. Our speakers and discussions that you will hear today, they bring knowledge, strategies, and information that we will be able to use to transform systems, to strengthen our communities, and most importantly, to save lives. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you who are joining today, and for those who may watch this recording at a later date. Our commitment to collaboration, whether from government, healthcare, law enforcement, education, or community organizations, reminds us that this fight cannot be won alone. It requires all of us working together with urgency, compassion, and resilience. And so many of us, it just does our hearts good to know that there's so many dedicated professionals in this space and in this sector to really work together and pull together to help save lives. We're just so honored. We're honored to know many of you across the world, and we're so thankful that you've taken time out of your schedules to be with us. On behalf of the Louisiana First Foundation and the National Coalition for the Prevention of Human Sex Trafficking, thank you guys for being here. Your presence matters. Your voice matters. And the work we do together will make a difference for the countless numbers of children, families, and communities. And now it is my distinct honor to introduce to you our founder and president, someone who's no stranger to this space. She's a leader at the national, international level, and we're so honored to have her with us today, Mrs. Donna Edwards, former First Lady of Louisiana. I introduce her to you. Mrs. Edwards.
Thank you so much, Dana. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, friends and partners. I am deeply honored to welcome you once again to the Virtual Global Human Trafficking Prevention Summit. I'm Donna Edwards, founder and president, as Dana mentioned. When we began this journey years ago, our vision was simple, yet it was urgent: to build a movement that would bring people together across sectors, across states, and across nations to confront one of the greatest human rights crises of our time. Today, looking out at this gathering of advocates, of leaders, and change makers, I am filled with gratitude and hope to all of you. The summit represents the best of what can happen when we all work together. And it's a reminder that none of us can end human trafficking alone, but united, we are powerful. I especially want to acknowledge today First Lady Brittany Bashir of Kentucky. And while she cannot be with us live today, she has shared recorded remarks that we will hear shortly. And First Lady Bashir has been a steadfast and longtime supporter of our work, and she continues to serve as a very strong partner in the fight to prevent and end human trafficking. Her leadership and her commitment reassure us that when First Ladies, policymakers, and communities join forces, real progress can be made. We are so privileged to hear today from an extraordinary lineup of speakers and partners. Kevin Hyland, former UK Anti-Slavery Commissioner and head of Scotland Yard's Human Trafficking Unit, will share his expertise on dismantling trafficking networks globally. Colette Smith, founder and president of Believe in You, Inc., and the NFL's first African-American female coach, will inspire us with her work in empowering youth. Amy Hutzel, Director of Special Projects and Partnerships for Georgia's Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, will speak to the power of collaboration between government agencies and communities. Dr. Edie Sussman, trauma neurosurgeon and CEO of Safe Living Space, will remind us that healing is an essential as prevention. And finally, Dr. Dana Hunter and Deborah St. Germain will announce new training resources for medical providers to identify and assist victims early. We know this training is urgently needed. A 2022 study of emergency department nurses in Washington state found that approximately 80% of trafficking survivors access healthcare during their exploitation, and most often in emergency rooms. Yet the vast majority are never identified at the time. And so this really tells us why equipping health professionals, social workers, and first responders with specialized training is absolutely essential. Their awareness, their sensitivity, and their swift action can interrupt exploitation and become the lifeline that saves a life. So today, our impressive lineup of leaders, advocates, and practitioners reflects the breadth of what it takes to confront human trafficking, from government to medicine, from law enforcement to community organizations, from survivor advocates to educators. Each of us, each person has a voice, each discipline, and each perspective is vital. And as we move through today's summit, I encourage you to consider how the lessons that you hear today can be carried forward into your own work, your own communities, and your daily lives. And as Dana mentioned earlier, this is not just an event that is a call to action. It is a call to action. So thank you. Thank you for your presence, your commitment, and your partnership in this work. And may today's summit renew our energy and deepen our resolve to stand united against human trafficking. So may God bless each of you as we move forward. Thank you. And we're going to listen to the video.
Let's see.
Stand by for a little technical difficulty.
Hi, everyone. It's Kentucky's First Lady, Brittany Bashir. Thank you for inviting me to send a message to the Human Trafficking Prevention Summit. One of my top priorities as Kentucky's First Lady is helping to put an end to human trafficking in every awful form that it takes. Most important, this is a priority for me as a mom. For Andy and me, this is a responsibility to protect all children and all those who are vulnerable to abuse or exploitation. I'm proud to serve on the advisory board for the National Coalition for the Prevention of Human Sex Trafficking. Through that board and through summits like this one, I've seen that knowledge is power. We can make sure everyone in our communities is educated about the warning signs of trafficking. If we see something, we have to say something. We can spread the word about the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and together we can stop the stigma and remind people it's okay to ask for help. In Kentucky, Andy created the Office of Child Abuse and Human Trafficking Prevention and Prosecution, and he created the Survivors Council, which provided a way for survivors of violent crime to have a voice in their government. And this upcoming May, Kentucky will work with the National Coalition for the Prevention of Human Sex Trafficking to launch a statewide anti-trafficking awareness campaign ahead of the Kentucky Derby. Unfortunately, we know large celebrations and events can be a hotspot for human trafficking. So we want to make sure everyone who attends these events can recognize the signs of trafficking and knows how to report it. I want to encourage everyone here today to think about how you can bring this same sense of awareness and unity to the events in your communities. This issue can feel overwhelming, but when we work together and learn together, I know we can make a difference. I'm grateful that I get to work alongside you. Thank you again for being here and for your efforts to keep people safe.
We're very thankful to First Lady Bashir and her team for joining with us, and we're honored to work with them to really raise awareness and to help them implement a statewide campaign in the state of Kentucky ahead of the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Derby Festival. So more news to come on that. And now it is my honor to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Kevin Highland, a heavy hitter in the anti-trafficking space. Kevin Highland is a trailblazer in the fight against modern slavery and human trafficking. As the UK's first independent anti-slavery commissioner, he shaped national and global strategies to protect victims and hold traffickers accountable. He also served with London's Metropolitan Police, where he founded and led the country's first human trafficking unit. Kevin addresses this issue on a global level, advising the UN, the Council of Europe, and even the G20 on how nations can work together to end exploitation. We are thrilled to welcome him to briefly share his insights with us today. Kevin?
Thank you, Donna, for the introduction there, and thank you to Mrs. Edwards for asking me to speak today. And I've had the pleasure of coming to Louisiana on 4 occasions, but also to the United States on many, many occasions to discuss the issue of human trafficking and prevention. And now I speak to you from almost 4,000 miles away in Ireland. So it's great to be joining you. But I think what is important is to understand how human trafficking is connected globally. And I think that one of the areas, and I'm so pleased this event is taking place, because this is about professionalizing the response, making sure that measures are available to deal with trauma, to deal with the suffering that victims endure, to actually put them onto the route of a normal life, to be part of society. And that is very often the part that's missing. But another part that's missing on this agenda is holding the traffickers to account. And recently I did some work with the Attorney General's Alliance in the United States. And from that, by looking at things in a more connected way, we were able to identify that traffickers working in Arizona were connected to traffickers in the west of the UK, who were connected to traffickers in Colombia and in Southeast Asia. The same people using the same money routes and the same ways of promoting their illicit activities. So actually understanding how this crime works and how connected it is, that it may be going on a street corner in Louisiana or in London or in Paris, but it is often connected to a much bigger network that provides the support of the models, the sources, the intelligence, and how to actually learn to groom and shape young people and vulnerable people. And of course, in the United States, one of the big trafficking issues is the fact that people are being trafficked in Cambodia, particularly young people, and taken into warehouses and kept against their will, where they are forced to use technology to defraud people, normally of their pensions, who are United States residents. And later this year, I'll be actually in Arkansas, where they have had a problem with this, to talk to the attorney generals and their grouping there about this particular crime, which last year cost people in the United States $800 million US. And equally in the UK, mainly the English-speaking countries that are targeted by traffickers in Cambodia. So understanding those networks and how we break them down, how we chase the money, how we prevent these crimes happening, the role that businesses have, and the fact that businesses, we're all here on our computers now. The batteries that power our computers will have coltan in it, most likely come from the the Democratic Republic of Congo, or somewhere in Africa or India, where there will be children down mines today. And in those mines and in those areas, 22,000 children die every year of labor exploitation. 22,000. That's like 110 Boeing 737s dropping out of the sky. So we need to up the game. Globally, there is less than $1 billion spent on anti-trafficking and trafficking responses by G20 countries. So you think of the wealth of those countries, 80% of the world's economy, and they send 1 billion on anti-trafficking measures. So we need to force that they change that approach. But I'm so happy to be part of this, to see such a professional group of people come together, coming out with solutions, coming out with ways to approach this, and hearing the focus on sporting events. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about the process for Kentucky Derby, because in the UK, for example, we have Cheltenham Gold Cup. In Ireland, we have the Galway races. And we know that when those events happen, there is a spike in the trafficking of young women, particularly from Eastern Europe. So thank you for inviting me today. I'm really looking forward to continuing this relationship with Mrs. Edwards and across the United States and internationally, and really thank her and this team for the amazing work that they've done now, but in the past, and most importantly, in the future. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kevin, for those remarks and just for highlighting the importance of understanding those networks and how those connections go across states, across state lines, across countries, and it's just a global network. And so we thank you so much for highlighting that for us. And thank you for your leadership across the world on this issue. And now it is my distinct honor again to introduce another heavy hitter, another advocate. She's just broken every glass ceiling possible and has been a voice for vulnerable individuals of assault and exploitation. It is my honor to introduce Mrs. Colette V. Smith. Colette is a true trailblazer and voice for justice. She made history as the first African-American female coach in the NFL with the New York Jets. And she continues to break barriers as an author, Colette's Courage, which she will talk about hopefully in a minute. She's an advocate and a leader. She's a survivor of sexual assault and has turned her pain into purpose, using her voice to empower others and fight for change. Amongst a super long list of accomplishments and accolades, Colette is now a published author of her first children's book, Colette's Courage, and proudly serves as an ambassador for It's a Penalty, and has now joined our organization, the National Coalition, as an ambassador as well. And we are so proud to have her as an ambassador for us. Please join me in welcoming a rock star, Colette V. Smith. Colette.
Oh my goodness, I love it. I need you in my life every moment. Both you and Mrs. Edwards, I had the opportunity to meet during the Super Bowl in New Orleans. And I was so honored, so happy that I could meet you guys because of force. You guys are a force, and I recognize team. I recognize team, and sometimes you want people on your team, and you got to pull them over from that squad to my squad and vice versa. So it is truly an honor to be here today at the 12th Virtual Global Summit of the National Coalition for the Prevention of Human Sex Trafficking. I just want to begin by thanking the organizers and all of you who have committed your time and committed your energy and your hearts to this cause. This summit is not just an event. It is not. Let's be very clear. This summit is a lifeline. It's a gathering of survivors, of advocates, of medical professionals, community leaders, warriors, if I may, who refuse to stay silent in the face of one of the darkest crimes against humanity. As Dr. Hunter was saying, this topic is not theoretical for me, nor is it distant. As a survivor of sexual assault and domestic violence, I carry this issue in the deepest part of my heart and in my whole being. I know what it feels like to be silenced, to be stripped of safety and dignity. I've seen some really ugly experiences in my lifetime, and I never want to have to go through that again or have anyone else experience that kind of trauma. But I also know what it means to rise and what it means to reclaim my power and to turn pain into purpose. And that's exactly why I'm here today. I would have it no other way because I know together we are stronger. Team is important. And with this team, we can cover more ground because survival alone is not enough. I believe we are called not just to survive, but we are called to make sure no one else has to endure what we have. Every day I take steps, big and small, to help end this ugly reality of trafficking and violence. But now I know I am not alone, and which is what I want to share with everybody else. We are not alone. Today's conversations about patients centered practices in hospitals and clinics could not be more important. Survivors of trafficking and domestic violence don't just need treatment for the physical wounds, they need the care for the invisible ones. I know way too much about that. I've been carrying that for years. They need to be seen, they need to be heard, they need to be believed. They need a system that recognizes them as not cases, but as human beings deserving of dignity, respect, and compassion. When a victim comes into a hospital or a clinic, trust me, I've been there too. I've had to do this. This
I think we lost her for a minute.
Looks like we lost her, Dana. You may need to shoot her a text.
Okay.
Sorry, I got kicked off. I don't
There
know
she
what
is.
happened.
It's back. Okay.
I just got kicked off, but I want to get right back into it because this is vitally important. And I'm honored to be here. You know, when a victim comes into a hospital or a clinic, they may not be that may be the only one chance, the one window of opportunity for someone to notice, to intervene, or to change the trajectory of their life. That's why training, awareness, and patient centered practices are not optional, they are essential. To the medical professionals here today on this call, your role is sacred. You may be the first to notice what others have overlooked. Your compassion can plant the seed of hope that helps someone take their first step to regaining their freedom. And to my survivors out there, I see you. I honor you. I stand with you. I stand with you as your warrior sister. Your story matters. Your life matters. And your courage just to show up, just to keep breathing, is changing the world. You are valued. You are worthy of everything good and whole. And to everyone here that advocates and allies and family members, community leaders, I challenge you to keep fighting, keep educating, keep speaking out, because every voice matters, every action matters. And together, we are building a future where trafficking and abuse have no place in this world, in this universe, no more. So I want to close with, I am living proof that healing is possible, that joy is possible, that reclaiming your voice is actually possible. And if it's possible for me, I know it's possible for everybody else. And I'm humbled and I'm so honored to be an ambassador for the National Coalition for the Prevention of Human Sex Trafficking. And I will continue to fight with you and for you. Let's change the game together. I will reiterate that. Let's change the game together. Thank you so much. Now, I'm very proud to introduce this next woman. When I read about her, I was like, need her on my team, baby. And we do have her on our team. So now, without further ado, it's my privilege to introduce Amy Hutzel, Director of Special Programs and Partnerships with Georgia's Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Amy has led groundbreaking initiatives to strengthen Georgia's response to sexual assault and human trafficking. Under her leadership, the state has secured over $28 million to strengthen Georgia's criminal justice system and leads the state's sexual assault response team project. I mean, that's pretty big time, but there's more. She also played a key role in eliminating Georgia's sexual assault kit backlog and developing a statewide tracking system while also working with the FBI and the Texas Rangers on the Samuel Little cold cases. She now oversees Georgia's coalition to combat human trafficking and continues to champion victim services, ensuring that survivors receive justice and care. Please join me in a warm welcome for Miss Amy Hutzel.
Thank you so much, Coach Smith. I have to say, it has been such a pleasure to work with everyone, Mrs. Edwards, Dr. Hunter, at the National Coalition to End Human Sex Trafficking. It's been a pleasure, but I do have a complaint. I would not have chosen to speak after you, Coach Smith, because those are very powerful words and just a hard act to follow. So I thank you for your leadership and your advocacy. You were inspirational and I just got chills. So thank you for that. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. As Coach Smith mentioned, I'm Amy Hutzel with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. We can go ahead and advance the slide so we can talk a little bit about what I do in Georgia. The agency that I work for in Georgia is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and we are an executive branch agency here in Georgia. And so we are established to build consensus and unity among the state's diverse and interdependent criminal justice system components. So my areas of expertise are human trafficking, sexual assault, cold case sexually motivated homicides, and child abuse issues. And I am tasked in Georgia with really trying to do what I can to combat those crimes and provide the resources that our partners need. And consistent with our mission at the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, which is to innovate for criminal justice and empower victims. So, and we can go to the next slide. In that role, we have really strived in Georgia to make human trafficking a priority under the leadership of our governor and First Lady Marty Kemp. We have been tasked with ensuring that this is a priority for the state in our government role and for our partners throughout the state, because we know, and we've already heard from our colleague across the pond, Mr. Hyland, that this is a global issue, right? We already heard from him about some of the statistics associated with human trafficking nationally and globally. You see on your screen now some more statistics. Estimated 50 million people are trafficked globally every year. 30% identified child victims were sexually exploited, etc. So we know that this is a huge problem globally. We also know, next slide, that it's a problem here in the United States as well. This is known as the heat map from our national partner Polaris. These are calls that come into their national hotline and kind of what the hot spots are across the country. Many of you on this call already are very aware of this map and very aware of the issue nationally, but you see where a lot of the hot spots, as we say, are nationally. We know it's happening everywhere. If you see a little area that doesn't have a little heat element on it, that doesn't mean it's not happening there. It just means that there hasn't been necessarily a call coming from that area to the national hotline. So we know that it's a huge problem. And next slide, we'll talk about Georgia. In Georgia, we know it's a problem here too, right? We are a hub for human trafficking, are known as. And that is because we have a very large, one of the largest international airports, Hartsfield-Jackson. We have major interstates that run through the state. We have an adult entertainment industry in the state of Georgia, which also includes large hotels, busy lobbies. We've talked already today about sporting events, high profile, large events, whether they be sporting or otherwise, are quite frequent in the state. We've got a big one coming, FIFA. And so we're working now with our partners to ensure that we're prepared and making sure that we are providing the proper resources and investigative resources to ensure that those events can be run in the safest possibly way, free of trafficking. We also have a very robust tourism and agricultural industry. And so all of these things let us know that we really need to be focusing to make sure that our human trafficking resources are strong as well. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. So one of the resources that we have in the state is known as our Georgia Statewide Human Trafficking Task Force, and we're focusing on the 5 elements of human trafficking: vulnerability, recruitment, exploitation, withdrawal, and reintegration. This is one of the ways that we try to be extremely comprehensive in our approach. Next slide. I'm going to breeze through some of these preface slides because I really want to get to our partnership with our medical providers in Georgia, but as I know, we have a large medical audience today. This is our statewide hotline that has a phone tree. Individuals can utilize this hotline to connect directly to our Georgia Bureau of Investigation, or they can connect with resources for minor services for sex trafficking, for labor trafficking, and for residential services. Option 3 of that hotline goes directly, you can, next slide please, you can advance to the next slide, goes directly to our hotline advocates that are on my staff, which I'm going to show you in just one moment. The NHT hotline, as you can see, is taking a lot of calls. In 2024, we had 1,578 calls to that hotline, and that was coming from all over the state. So in Georgia, we have 159 counties. I don't know why we have so many counties, second to Texas apparently, but we're receiving calls from all of those counties. Next slide. These are our advocates, Lindsay Cheatham and Lainey Baumgardner, and we have one more that's joining us next week, are on our team at the state. They're on our staff and work directly with victims. So not only are we able to provide a state level response, we also are actually out in the field working directly with our law enforcement partners and with our victims directly as well. And that comes into play very significantly when we talk about our medical response. We have a dedicated unit, I'm proud to say, at the GBI, which is our state police, and that is our HEAT unit, and it is the Human Exploitation and Trafficking Unit. And they are dedicated agents that work specifically on all forms of human trafficking, whether that be sex trafficking, adult or minor sex trafficking, or labor trafficking. Next slide. We also focus on the intersection of illegal street gang activity and human trafficking. You can go to the next slide. In partnership with our Georgia Gang Investigators Association. So we partnered in Georgia with our Gang Association and Gang Investigators Association, rather, to develop training. So all of the investigators in Georgia who are a member of that association are trained in how to investigate human trafficking as well, because we know in Georgia that there are many illegal street gangs, and all of them are involved in human trafficking because it is profitable. They're illegal organizations that are formed for the purpose of making money. And you, as we always say, you can sell a drug one time, you can sell a gun one time, but you can sell an individual over and over and over again. And you can do it every day, and you can force them every day into that activity. And so it is very, very profitable. So we want to make sure that our gang investigators not only know how to investigate drug cases, gun cases, etc., they understand the dynamics of working with human trafficking victims and how to investigate a human trafficking case as well. Next slide. We do a lot of training as well. You can see on your screen all the training that we do. We're really focused on making sure we're providing those resources throughout the state. I don't want to run out of time, so we're going to skip over that. You can ask questions later if you want. We also have a data clearinghouse at the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Our Statistical Analysis Center is collecting data from numerous resources across the state in an attempt to make sure we are proactive. We understand where there may be hotspots of human trafficking across the state and how we can be proactive in the way we're addressing and investigating that as well. Next slide. So because we wanted to be very comprehensive, several years ago, we really started to look at labor trafficking, in particular, agricultural labor trafficking. So with the next slide, you will see that we had a grant from the Howard G. Buffett Foundation to form a task force. And this task force at the time was focused on agricultural labor trafficking. This kind of brings us to our medical response, because it was with this initiative, we really started to focus on our medical response more so than we had in the past. Next slide. There was an operation on the next slide that was called Blooming Onion. At the time, it was called Blooming Onion. I'm sorry, you can go back to the previous one. There was the previous one, I'm sorry. There was a restaurant chain that didn't appreciate us using the name Blooming Onion, so it was changed. But this was a agricultural labor trafficking federal investigation that found that workers were being brought into the state of Georgia under the legal H-2A visa process and being exploited. On the next slide, you'll see some of the living conditions that the workers were forced to be in. They were not paid properly. They had horrible living conditions. On the next slide, I think you're going to see more of the living conditions that they were forced to live in and work in. And so we were brought in as part of the takedown that occurred to recover the victims who were working in the fields and to support the investigative process. So as part of that response, we were in South Georgia able to come together in a location to provide a receiving center for the workers as they were coming in off of the fields. They were met with a trauma-informed and victim-centered approach. We had culturally specific food for them, but the very first people that they saw when they came in after being recovered out of the fields were medical professionals, because we wanted to, and you can go to the next slide, we wanted to put together a team, and the next slide, please, also, a team to make sure that we were comprehensively addressing the needs of those human trafficking victims. So on our team, we had medical nurses, and particularly individuals that have expertise in mental health, etc. We had sexual assault nurse examiners, all in partnership with our law enforcement, federal and local and state level law enforcement. Next slide. Our medical team included advanced practice nurses, mental health nurses, as I mentioned, SAMEs, and nurses with expertise in substance abuse. And this began the model that we created using the Operation Blooming, or the Operation Blue Onion, as a catalyst for really start launching the medical response that we have to now all of our human trafficking operations, including sex trafficking operations. Next slide. In this, response, we feel like the role of the healthcare providers to identify members of the multidisciplinary team and understand each role in responding to individuals who've experienced human trafficking. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on that collaboration piece, that we're really working together as a team. Also, understanding the medical team's responsibilities in providing trauma-informed holistic care with an emphasis on respecting the patient's autonomy to make his or her own decisions about their medical care. And then finally, identifying the critical resources necessary for initiating the medical response and create a network of healthcare professionals, law enforcement agencies, and community organizations. So again, really looking to that collaborative effort at the state, local, and community level. Next slide. These are some pictures from some of our operations, because again, we are really focusing on that patient-centered, trauma-informed care. And so first and foremost, when an individual, as you all know, has experienced trauma, it is important to establish trust with that individual and to make sure that their basic needs are met first. So these are some of the tables that we have typically set up at some of our operations. These are sex trafficking operations that you're seeing these slides from, that are really focused on meeting the basic needs and comfort of the victims that we are seeing as part of that response. Next slide. And then we mentioned building community partnerships. We partner in Georgia with Bethesda Medical, and they actually provide a mobile unit. So what you're seeing now is a picture of their mobile unit, interior and exterior. They, under their grant, are able to respond directly to locations throughout the state to make sure that we have the proper medical response in place for our sex trafficking victims. Many times what we have seen is that some of our victims may not have actually received any health care in previous months. And so they have a lot of questions that may or may not have anything to do with their actual victimization. And as we are able to connect them with a nurse practitioner, or doctor to make sure that they have that ability to access care, we see that trust level begins to build. They begin to understand that we're here to help. And so we find that putting our medical units on the front line of a human trafficking operation is one of the best ways to ensure that we are being patient-centered, victim-centered, trauma-informed, and building trust, because we know that we're not going to be able to continue with an investigation if we don't have cooperative witnesses and cooperative victims. And so first and foremost, we want to make sure they're okay. We are genuinely concerned about their health and well-being. And we also know in doing that, the secondary benefit of that is that they are more likely to continue to help us hold offenders accountable. Next slide. We also use telehealth on our operations. So our nurse practitioners are obviously under medical supervision, and there is an MD on call throughout our operations that allow that consultation directly between our nurse practitioners, nurses, and our medical doctors as well. Next slide, thank you. So this was some additional photos from our most recent operation that involved medical care. That was another labor trafficking operation. This was specific to floor covering manufacturing plant up in Cartersville, Georgia, where we knew that the workers were being exploited. There were not good working conditions. And so as the law enforcement went in to take down that facility, we were waiting offsite with all the care that was needed to make sure that we were being trauma informed. So as you can see, in that particular operation, we had 53 patients triaged, and 15 were treated by nurse practitioners on site. And this was in a church. It looks like a gym, but it was in the gym of a local church that very graciously provided the space for us to provide this care. Next slide. these are more pictures from that operation as well. As you can see, just as reiterating that we want to make sure that our victims are comfortable and that all their needs are met. So these are some of the tables that our medical professionals and interns set up through donations for the individuals as they were coming in to be able to access. Next slide. So I could go on and on about this. I wanted to do a very, very broad and general presentation today based on the timing that we have. And so I wanted to make sure that I introduced you all to Dr. Marnie Dodd, who is our Georgia statewide SANE coordinator. She's brand new in her role, but one of the things that she does in her role is to make sure that our human trafficking response and those operations that we've covered today are run properly and are properly resourced. Marnie has joined us today, so I'm going to let her say a few words, but one of the things that really made us feel extremely grateful to have her in this role is her history with the development of what we call the Georgia screening tool for CSEC victims for medical providers. You can go to the next slide, which I'm gonna see if Marnie would be willing to say a few words about. She developed this tool with Dr. Jordan Greenbaum. We don't have time today to go into it, but I wanted to make sure you were aware of it and had her contact information for any of the medical professionals that would like to learn more about it. But I'll let you say just a few words quickly about it, Marnie, if you're on.
Okay, yes, thank you. I'm happy to be here and share about this tool. So what we realized, I mean, this has been since I want to say we started it in 2013 of looking at that there wasn't really a good screening tool available for the child population. And we really geared it towards adolescent because that's where a lot of the kids that we were seeing in our center at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, we were needing more to help screen them. And what we have developed was a 6-item screening tool to help us really assess risk, educate and offer resources more than looking to obtain a disclosure and, identifying that from it. So we're looking at characteristics of commercial sexual exploitation or child sex trafficking to, separate those out from victims who may just have had an acute sexual assault case type of thing. And so from that study, we came up with we were able to identify the 6 items that really set them as, if they're not in the life, they are super high risk for it, and they need resources to help prevent them from becoming trafficked. And so that really helped us with that process. And so these are some of the 6 items that we have on our screening tool, and I'm happy to do more of a training at a later date if anyone is looking for that. But these were some of the factors that we found significant. So if 2 or more of these responses were positive or yeses, then it counted as a positive screen, and it didn't necessarily mean that they were trafficked right now, but they're very high risk for it. And so we would allocate resources towards them to help with that. And you can probably go to the next one, I think is. Okay, that did
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dodd. Thank you for jumping in there. I really thought it was important for this audience for them to meet you and to at least have your contact information, which we'll show in just one moment. But I wanted to say thank you again to everyone who joined today. Everyone's a hero who's interested in this work. I love to close with a slide because it's a hard topic to discuss, and it's a hard topic to be a responder for. And so everyone's a hero, and we appreciate you very much. This is my contact information. And then on the next slide, we'll close with Dr. Dodd's contact information for any of you who would like to reach out to her as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Dr. Dodd. And I also want to just say another special thanks to Colette as well, who had to hop off for another speaking engagement. But Amy, your presentation was just remarkable to see the innovation and the partnerships that you guys have formed. So it's just remarkable. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I might stay on because I would like to hear the rest of it if it's okay.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you all. So I am just so honored to introduce our last speaker. Pleased to introduce her. She's another champion. She's been with us before at one of our global summits, and so we just had to have her back. The research and information that she shared on traumatic brain injury was just groundbreaking, and so we were pleased that she could join us again and share updates on some of her recent work and that she's done really across the world. So I am pleased, you guys, to introduce Dr. Edie Zussman. Dr. Zussman, to those of you who were not on the last summit, she's a nationally respected trauma neurosurgeon whose groundbreaking research has shed light on brain injuries, specifically caused by domestic violence, child abuse, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Dr. Zussman began medical school at Northwestern University at just the tender age of 19. She's a genius, you all. She trained in neurosurgery at a level 1 trauma center, went on to serve as the chief of neurosurgery at the Mayo Clinic Network affiliated North Bay. Today, she leads Neuroscience Partners, an interdisciplinary team advancing care for traumatic brain injury and concussions from all causes. She's presented her research at leading institutions across the country and the world, and continues to drive change as CEO of Safe Living Space, a nonprofit dedicated to closing the gap in brain injury and evaluation and care. Please join me in welcoming our final speaker, Dr. Edie Zussman.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, Dr. Edie Zussman. Absolutely grateful and honored. Thank you, Dr. Hunter. And today you will actually be hearing hot off the press research. If we go to the next slide, I want to acknowledge and thank future physician Switha Mann, who actually has been doing some of the work understanding brain injury globally in high-risk populations, such as sexual assault, to pull together some of the threads that we've heard from UK Anti-Slavery Commissioner Hyland, looking at professionalizing our response. That really rings a bell to me. And then when we link that with what Mrs. Edwards said in her introduction, that 80% of trafficked individuals during the time course of their exploitation see one of us. They come in for services, they get health services, they see social services, they may interact with the justice system, first responders or shelters. To me, I feel like that's our opportunity. And next slide, please. I feel like our opportunity is to make this brain trauma piece, to make the injury to the brain visible for everyone on this call. There are 200 of us here, and we all have a different vantage point and perspective, including some of the most important perspective, which is our survivors, who need to inform every step of this work. And so when we think of brain trauma, it's everything on this slide. It's what are the symptoms? Headache, dizziness, lightheadedness. It's the mental health symptoms, anxiety, depression, hopelessness, suicidality. And it's what we observe, what our forensic nurses observe, what our first responders see. It's abnormal depth perception. It's getting dizzy when you turn your head. It's feeling a headache that comes up from the back. So everything on here is a clue. It's a piece of the puzzle. It helps us understand the extent of brain trauma that the individual seeking help, seeking services from us is bringing to us. This is the patient-centered piece. And my hope is, my goal, by the end of our few minutes together, that each one of you will have a takeaway that you can bring to your own practice and to your own work. Next slide, please. And so I wanted to start by saying, so I'm a traumatic brain injury expert, 30 years, car accidents, falls, work injuries. It was during COVID that I started seeing the population of domestic and intimate partner violence patients. And I looked to see, well, do we have any guidelines? You know, how do we take care of these patients? And there really isn't anything out there. So we have beautiful guidelines for our athletes and for how to handle a motor vehicle collision. We literally have nothing in the space of abuse-induced brain injury. And so we actually did a study, one of our first in our Mayo Clinic Network affiliate, which was to say, well, are these injuries different than injuries from what you can see on the right side of the slide, motor vehicle collisions and work-related injuries? The answer was no, not on any objective metric, with the exception of the number of brain injuries, the gender, and the time for referral. So if I see a married accountant who's been CFO of a Fortune 1000 company, he had a car accident and he tells me, I can't go into Starbucks to get my coffee. My wife has to go in. Well, why, Mr. So-and-so? He says, because ever since that car accident, I feel like if somebody cuts in front of me in line, I'm going to hit them. Okay, I mean, we're talking, the old, like this guy wouldn't hit a fly. He couldn't hit a fly. He's been sitting there looking at those books for all these years. So what's going on there? To me, that's what a brain injury looks like. Or a cardiac ICU nurse, the coolest of the cool, right? Multitasks, life and death, handles everything. After she was hit in the head at work, she says that if she's cooking and her twins are arguing and the phone rings, she becomes so overwhelmed, she goes into her closet and cries. And so those are all elements that I classically see with brain injuries from any cause. And now let's shift over to the left side. I walk into the room of one of my patients and she's crying. And she's crying because she just lost custody of her children to the perpetrator. And she says, well, I was gaslit in front of the court and lost my cool because they told me I was a bad mom. I would forget to pick up my kids at school. And so I said, do they know that you have a brain injury and that all of our brain injured patients miss their appointments and aren't prepared and don't have their paperwork done? And I said, the remedy is a strategy. You just set your alarm on your cell phone. And some of my patients have to set it twice. They have to set it in the morning to remind them, and then when they actually have to leave to come to my appointments. And this gal sat up and she said, are you telling me that it's the brain injury and then includes some swear words here, that blank caused by pushing me down the flight of stairs, that's why I forgot to pick up my kids and I'm not a bad mom? So I want to show these examples because I want each of you in the audience, to think about individuals where you've picked this up. You've picked up already that something wasn't right, but it was hard to give it a name. And right now, a lot of these signs and symptoms are being given mental health names. For example, the emotional ability or the lack of recall of an event that's being called emotional blocking rather than loss of consciousness, loss of awareness. And that's the example I give in the 18-year-old who was gang raped coming home through a field. She doesn't remember the event. And that right there has to be our star. That has to be where this is visible. That is a brain injury plus the emotional trauma. So it's an and proposition. One of the things that was fascinating in the group that you're going to hear about from India is that there's a group of people in that culture where they're leaving into trafficking, such a challenging situation in their homes and with their husbands and partners, that trafficking ends up becoming a more stable option. And then lastly, the pole dancer who was pushed out of a moving car on Highway 80 coming home from San Francisco. We started using the language of sports concussion, and I want to bring in some of the wonderful words that Colette gave us from the NFL work that she's done, and that is play stops in the NFL if you see a big crash or if somebody goes out. In our patient population, some of them go right back and they have to cook dinner and they have to take care of newborn children and they have to drive the carpool, and that is another one of our absolute opportunities that we can move forward on today, each of us, that once we think there's a brain injury, we need to apply the rules that we already know about how to treat and evaluate brain injuries, including protection from the second injury. Next slide, please. Let's go back one, please. And I did want to acknowledge and give voice to the fact that there is a trigger warning for the next few slides. And I encourage anyone to turn away or or do what they need. And just to acknowledge that our survivors are such an important part of this group, and it's because of brain injured survivors that so much of this work has come forward. So we'll go back to the image. And with that image, I want to share that there are 3 types of brain injuries. So we're going to look at the picture now that shows the neck and that also shows the brain. So I think it's back 3 pictures. If we can go, there we go, perfect. So there are 3 different types of brain injuries that I would like everyone to begin thinking about. There's the more classic TBI injury where somebody hits their head or they're hit by something onto their head. So that's one type, very common. The second in this population is really profound. It's almost more of a whiplash type of mechanism. So it's slapping, it's shaking, it's being thrown to the ground. So for folks who are thrown to the ground, they oftentimes have the same type of whiplash as a restrained driver in a car accident. And that creates an occipitocervical stretch. Those are the folks who have our occipitocervical headaches. So that's the second type. So there's the TBI mechanism, the whiplash mechanism, and then the strangulation suffocation mechanism where there's a change in blood flow and oxygen to the neck. And we particularly see this in our young people because of the mismatch between the type of violence, the sexual violence that they experience, and their ability to preserve their airway. Next slide, please. And so summarizing 3 types of brain injury, we see the injuries to the head and neck, we see the whiplash, and we see strangulation suffocation. And these happen at the same event. They happen on the same day in sequential events. They happen over the same week or month or year. And the takeaway is that especially for the traffic population, these are young brains. These young brains have the ability to heal. If we can identify them when they first come into contact with us, if we can use the same rules that we already know from sports about keeping the brain safe, allowing somebody to recover, giving them the nutrition and the sleep and the support that they need, we have the best chance for brain healing and recovery in this population. Next slide. And so here's the analogy. We don't need to learn anything new. We know about how to take care of concussions and brain injuries. We need to now apply it at every point of contact for individuals in high-risk populations. So that's our sexual assault survivors. That's our trafficking survivors, child abuse. In the US, it's foster care. We want to think about these individuals and everything that they bring to us. So we've all been trained in trauma-informed care. I love the title of this presentation and of this summit. I think that, as always, First Lady Edwards is predicting the future together with Dr. Hunter. What they're telling us is where we all need to be. We need to be not just trauma-informed, we need to be brain trauma responsive. We need to take action with this new information and understand that brain trauma includes things like memory deficits and balance problems and light sensitivity. Our DV-IPV survivors, when we interviewed them in 7 shelters in the greater New York area, over 20% said they'd had too many injuries to the head and neck, especially when we added in that strangulation-induced brain injury. They had too many to count. If there's an athlete, I have a downhill skier and he had his 5th concussion, I'm obligated to counsel him at 5 concussions that he's at risk for long-term sequelae. And to me, I feel like we're looking at a population of people that have risks that may be 2 and 3 times what we're seeing in our athletes in car accidents. For the survivors, they don't even get a break when they go to work or their abuser goes to work because they receive violence where they're living, where they're domiciled, and also when they're being exploited. And so I want everybody here to think about all our opportunities. If you're a mental health provider, are you assessing for brain injury? If you're a forensic nurse, is brain injury included in that? And I would say that it's actually easier to see the signs and symptoms of brain injury as like a leading predictor of who may be in an at-risk population. So it works both ways. If somebody comes in with a known history or known risk parameter for brain injury, then we know for sure they need brain injury assessment. But what if our assessment includes brain injury? And then we ask the questions. Have you ever been hit in the head or neck? You know, have you ever experienced anyone changing your ability to breathe or compromising your airways? So when this becomes visible, and when we can, to quote Mr. Hyland, professionalize our response by incorporating the brain injury visibility into every touch point, I think we're going to have that beautiful double win, what we really seek. Next slide, please. And so here's what this is the group of individuals who we need to be thinking about brain injury, where at this point, both retrospective literature review and research and our own Safe Living Space prospective research for many of these has validated and documented that the brain injury element is impacting more than 50% of individuals in these high-risk groups. That's substance abuse. Some of these folks are self-medicating. They don't know they're brain injured. They just know that their brain runs away and they have a million thoughts and it's hard to concentrate. So they take medications that might decrease or slow down their brain, like alcohol or Valium. The folks who have difficulty kind of because they have a blunt affect, or they feel like they're not themselves, or they tell me that their thinking is slowed, they're going to go ahead and take stimulants to help address that. And we know that if somebody comes in with no history of substance abuse and a single brain injury, they have a 30 to 40% chance of becoming to developing substance use disorder. Incarceration, homeless, we did a project in Chicago. 40 to 50% of people coming into a homeless shelter had brain injuries before becoming homeless. It's part of why people can't keep a job. It's part of why people don't have that friend network. So we understand the abuse and the manipulation and the narcissism of our perpetrators. We just need to pull this piece into. This is playing a role in our military and first responders. We touched on foster care, child abuse, domestic violence, and trafficking. And then we want to ask about the different types of violence. So you can get a brain injury without being hit in the head. You can get a brain injury with consensual strangulation, where you lose consciousness, where you don't remember the event, or where you have a terrible headache afterwards. And so when we think about patient-centered care, one of our themes today, we want to be aware that somebody coming in with an acute or subacute brain injury, they're going to be sensitive to light. It's going to be hard for them to be in a fluorescent lit room. It's going to be hard for them to concentrate on your interview if there's a lot of background noise or moving parts or music playing. They're going to go from laughing to crying and emotional ability. A lot of my patients get diagnosed with borderline personality when the brain injury piece isn't visualized. And I do feel, because this is such an elite audience, that this pivot from trauma informed care to brain trauma responsive care is one new step. And the line at the bottom here, the recommendation to begin using the term near fatal strangulation rather than non-fatal strangulation, is another, I think, really important game changer for our future. And I wanted to make sure that all of you started thinking about that together with us. Next, please. And so over the last few years, we've created a brain injury assessment at intake for 7 domestic violence shelters in the greater New York area in collaboration with Volunteers of America. We are now up to 700 people, and this is being done by people who are not medically trained. They're being done by social workers and advocates. So right at the front line, where they ask questions about lived experience, they ask questions about symptoms. And I'll show you some of those results. And so this was the lived experience of individuals coming into shelter. Within the first week or two is when we get this additional information. And you can see hitting, punch, slapped with objects. It approaches about 40%. And some of these have multiple injuries. Next. And then these are the symptoms that they had at that time coming into shelters. So if you're in an acute frontline setting, you're going to see a lot more of this. For folks who are out of the trafficking experience a year or two, a lot of these symptoms start healing. And that's one of the beauties of the network that we're building in terms of recovery. It's that these symptoms do heal. So if you're seeing individuals within the first 4 to 6 weeks, ask them about their headaches. If they're wearing glasses or a hat, they're not being disrespectful. They just can't take the fluorescent light. It bothers their eyes. And then the forgetfulness. Very important, because these individuals don't know that they're forgetful. They just feel bad about themselves, and they get gaslit about the fact that they missed their appointment. They get gaslit by us. They get gaslit by medical doctors who they're going to see for help because they can't answer this question that's being asked, because their mind will often tumble and they'll start answering tangential questions. That's not to be disrespectful. It's because they have a brain injury, and we just haven't been able to be patient-centered and meet them where they are, as I think all of us would like to grow to do. Next slide, please. And so then there's something very exciting, and this is the result of our collaboration with Louisiana First and with NCPHST. So this is your work. This is what came out of a year and a half ago when we were together last. And that is that we sent a trained medical student who can do a neurologic exam to help go into a shelter and validate the screening type protocols that we were doing. And this is the first time we're presenting the results from a global trafficking shelter in India. And this work is really profound, and it really dovetails with what we're seeing. Next slide, please. And so what we found is that in the 75 clients who've been assessed, 77% were in the shelter due to trafficking. Some of them had been there a few days, some of them had been there a few years. So it's a heterogeneous group. The age range was 15 to 56 in this particular shelter. In India, there's a separate shelter for individuals under 14. This number will be a surprise to no one. The average age range for initial violent events was 4 to 30 with an average of 14. And that was the first data point that Mrs. Edwards gave me. She's like, these are 13 and 14-year-old brains. And when I realized that 13 and 14-year-old brains were being injured, that's profound in terms of the long-term effect. So we'll move along as quickly as we can here. And so we found that the overall profile of the injury was the same between the domestic violence and the trafficking shelter. Next, please. And we found out that the symptoms were the same: the headaches, the sensitivity to light, the dizziness. Next slide. And there is an element of strangulation in the international population at about 28%. What we're seeing in the US shelters is 50% of individuals are being strangled. So that third type of brain injury is very important in the population we care for in the United States. Next, please. And here's where it's a both. These are the mental health symptoms. More than 50% had symptoms of emotional dysregulation, anxiety, depression, difficulty sleeping. This is classic for any brain injury. And sometimes it's labeled as mental health, and the mental health providers don't have the ability or haven't taken the step to look beyond that to say, is there a concomitant brain injury? Are these symptoms of the brain injury? Or are these independent mental health factors as a result of the emotional elements? And I think that's the curiosity that all of us should leave our summit with. Next slide, please. And so here are the results, hot off the press. So the 53% was coming into DV shelters in New York, 79% in the trafficking shelter in India. Next, please. And so with that, the question is, should we just if it's more than 50%, should we treat everybody with brain trauma informed care? Should that be the new way that we approach this? And how does this help people? Well, we can be more compassionate. If somebody is sensitive to noise, maybe we understand if they're new to our shelter that we give them a few days where they don't eat with the group and they don't have as many meetings, or we send somebody with them if they've got a meeting with the legal system or the justice system to help advocate for them on the site. If they get confused, they lost the paper, they don't understand the question, can the brain heal? That's one of the questions we're always asked. And the answer to that is yes, yes, yes. It heals primarily with time. It heals by training to develop compensatory pathways. It heals by strategies to be able to compensate, like what we talked about, where you set your timer if you know that your memory is not as good, or you take a picture of what's in your refrigerator when you go to the store because you're not going to remember without a detailed list. And then the question is there a cost to this? If we do this, can we afford it? I would want to leave you with the thought today that we can't afford not to. We can't afford not to. Right now, our work shows that the recidivism of 7 to 9 that we see in so many of the domestic and intimate partner violence shelters, that one of the paramount elements is the fact that with the brain injury, which is often unrecognized, it's hard to get and keep a job if you don't know that if you're a receptionist and somebody comes to the window and you're emailing and the phone rings, that you're going to be just like our cardiac nurse. You're going to leave, you're going to run away, you're going to be overwhelmed because of your brain injury. But if you do that job in the back room where you do one of those things at a time, you can be an absolute star. Next slide. And so this idea of amnesia, here's one of the takeaway pearls. If there's a gap in the story you hear, right now that's being interpreted as, oh, they're covering up, or it's emotional blocking. Let's call that form fruits, the first example of the brain injury. Just like if somebody made a left turn and can't remember anything after that until the paramedics are knocking on their window, that's a brain injury. So we want to bring this brain injury and brain trauma approach into every interaction and every story we hear, especially our first responders. Next slide, please. And this delay of symptoms. Again, are we re-victimizing our clients? When they tell the first responders they're fine, and then 2 or 3 days later, they're feeling awful, they've got headaches, they've got dizziness, it takes 2 to 3 days for all these symptoms to come in. Our fight or flight hormones protect us. People feel fine at the accident. They feel fine when the police knock on their door after a domestic violence call. But we need to make sure we're seeing them again in 2 to 3 days to really assess the symptoms, rather than victimizing them and saying, oh, well, they were fine initially. Now that there's a legal case, now they've got all these symptoms. Next, please. And lastly, we can improve today in all of these things. We can improve by understanding that there's a brain injury. If someone comes late for a meeting, they look paranoid because the remote's missing or their purse is missing, but they can't remember where they put it. Let's start there. And I'll go ahead and pause. I think the last slide is just contact information to continue the conversation. And we'd just be so grateful for any of the organizations that want to partner, that want to think about training about how to recognize brain injury and evaluate brain injury in your organization. Or I can wear the other hat, which is you can run a case, an anonymous case by me to see if there are any medical elements that we can bring forward.
Wow. Wow. What another outstanding presentation. So groundbreaking and eye-opening. And as you mentioned, Dr. Zussman, so many of us we've been around survivors. We've seen some of the symptoms of brain trauma and brain injury, possibly not recognizing it. So your screening tools and your training and research is really a game changer for our health professionals, as well as social workers and others. So thank you so much for sharing this. And as Dr. Zussman mentioned, please reach out to her if you all are interested in training. Before you log off, we have 2 announcements, speaking of training, that we want to share with you And we would also ask that you complete our evaluation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Debbie, and she'll share very briefly about our training for medical professionals. Deb?
Hi, everyone. My name is Debbie St. Germain, and I'm a forensic nurse in New Orleans. And Dr. Zussman, I have to tell you that this is my new mission. Instead of with our looking at our domestic violence, sexual assault, and then screening patients for trafficking, I start out talking about brain injury. And I think that you hit everything on the head. And so I will be in touch. But in the meantime, we were asked as a group of nurses to create a training in lieu of what else is out there, but something specific for our state. And this was right before our Sugar Bowl that is always in the beginning of the year. And this is right before we had the Super Bowl in New Orleans. So we want to invite you to take this free training. It is a 2-hour training. It was completed by our task force with the Louisiana State Nurses Association. And the experts that came together and produced this really wanted to share with you guys. And I think that it's going into the chat right now, but share with you some of the other faces of what people think of, you know, trafficking victims, what they look like, especially in our pediatric patients. Dr. Ann Troy, who is a child abuse nurse practitioner at Children's Hospital here in New Orleans, she gives a lot of insight into things you would not believe are trafficking, but they actually are. So we want to invite you to do, just log on to the Louisiana State Nurses Association. Dana, has that been put up in our chat?
Let's see. Not yet.
Okay. I will read off, but it's lsna.nursingnetwork.com is how you're going to be able to access it. And then you will see a tab that says On Demand CE. And it's the very first program that's listed for you. And you can earn 2.0 contact hours. And it will still be an active link through 2027. So please share that with anybody. You do not need to be in Louisiana or a nurse or anybody is interested in taking it. Yes, paramedics can take this training. So please join us and give us your feedback. But I think this has just been such an enlightening few minutes that we've shared together, and I hope you search out more. And thank you so much, Dana, for being our partner on this activity and creating our training.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. And we are dropping this in the chat now as we speak. There we go. All right, so multitasking. Thank you so much, Deborah, and thank you for LSNA for partnering with us and allowing us to be a part of such a needful training. And speaking of training, our next slide, just very quickly, and then I'll turn it back over to Mrs. Edwards. We have NCPHST, we've developed human trafficking indicator badges for health professionals. Please consider, please consider reaching out to us to have customized badges for your health system or organization. We would love to work with you all. It's a very easy to read badge that gives indicators on one side, and we can customize a protocol of reporting on the other side, specific again to your health system. So we would ask that you would reach out to us. We would love to work with you or send you some samples or a few copies at no cost, but we could help customize a badge for you for your health system and share our templates. So we would love for you guys to consider and reach out to us. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Edwards to share one more training opportunity before we close.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. Thank you to everyone. This has been incredible, incredible information, just packed, very packed. And I learned something every time I'm a part of one of these Zoom summits, and it's just been incredible. And I think everybody who leaves today will be able to take the information that they've heard and use it in some way. And I think there'll be a lot of emails coming across to each one of you today. So thank you so much for sharing all that. But before we end, we want to tell you a little bit about marking your calendars about something you're not going to want to miss. So on Wednesday, October the 15th, next month, and we don't usually have them back to back, but this is something you're not going to want to miss. And please, I know there are a lot of people I had to jump off, but we'll try to get information out. But at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, we will convene national and state leaders to discuss about another population of vulnerable youth, children in foster care. We will have a talented group of youth advocates sharing a compelling presentation along with other national leaders. And you don't want to miss these young leaders are incredible, impactful, and they will not only bring you to a place that you just cannot believe, but their heart's just full and just information that you're going to find useful. But thank you everybody for joining us today, for your commitment to ending human trafficking. I want to continue to encourage you to this work that we're doing by taking part in our trainings and learning more about ncphst.org. And we want to invite you all to a daily prayer using the NCPHST prayer card as we lift up survivors, families, and communities impacted by trafficking. And before you log off, don't forget to complete our evaluation and let us know how we did and what we can do to help you all connect and be more informed. So may we continue to do this work together with courage and compassion. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us if we can partner with you in any way. May God bless you and God bless your families and children.
Thank you. And to those who put questions in the chat, we will copy the questions and information, and we'll be sure to get this to the panelists. Thank you all so very much.
And I just want to say one last thing. We had speakers from Ireland, people committed from for 400 commitments, but we've had over 10 states listening today. And our former First Lady from Arkansas, Susan Hutchinson, I saw her in the chat, and some others. If we missed you, apologize, but incredible participation from all 10 states. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.